Cellular respiration, this is for you, grade 10. As agreed, you need to get your book, get a copybook, and take notes as much as you want. You can stop and repeat at any point to understand anything better. Everything I say is already in your book, and we're explaining it as slow as we can. So today we're talking about cellular respiration. What is cellular respiration? We already talked about photosynthesis in plants and the Kelvin cycle. So during photosynthesis, the plants are going to use the energy from the sun and transform it into actual food that the plants can use. As we said that the photosynthesis was two parts, a part that is light dependent and a part that is light independent. The aim of these two parts is to use the solar energy and form actual food, which is the glucose. So during photosynthesis, plants using the solar energy to produce food. So how are these plants are going to use this food? For the plants to use this glucose for their growth and repair, they do what we call cellular respiration. So you have to remember that these two processes, they do take place inside the plant. The photosynthesis during the morning, during which the plant makes its own food, and then the cellular respiration. Once the plants make their own food by photosynthesis, they need to actually use up this food. As we said during photosynthesis, that it happens in the chloroplasts, the cellular respiration is going to happen within the mitochondria. This is the mitochondria that you see in the picture here. The mitochondria, also called the powerhouse of the cell. They are not called the powerhouse of the cell for nothing, because they are called the powerhouse of the cell because they're responsible for producing energy. What is the energy currency of the cell? Remember, we said that the energy currency of the cell is the ATP. So the mitochondria are going to use the glucose that was formed in the morning by the chloroplasts in order to produce this ATP. When you hear the term cellular respiration, it might make you form a mental picture of the cells breathing. It's not really correct, but it's good. Your cells need the oxygen that you take in when you breathe. That oxygen is going to help your body release the energy in sugars and other carbon-based molecules. At the same time, we said in the morning the plants use the carbon dioxide to build up the sugar. And then in the afternoon, the plants are going to use oxygen. Remember when we used to tell you when you were even way younger, do not keep the plants in your room in the night, because in the morning the plants use carbon dioxide and yield oxygen. They give out oxygen. But at night, during cellular respiration, the plants are going to use the oxygen and they're going to give out carbon dioxide, because they are going to be breaking down the sugar that was made by the plant during photosynthesis in the morning. So cellular respiration releases the chemical energy from the sugars and other carbon-based molecules to make ATP. What are the other carbon-based molecules? We have sugar, we have fat, and we have protein. These three things, we call them carbon-based molecules because carbon makes a very important part in their composition. So cellular respiration is going to break down the sugar and the other carbon-based molecules to make ATP. When is this going to happen? Cellular respiration has to happen in the presence of oxygen. Cellular respiration is what we call an aerobic process. Aerobic, which is related to air, which means that it needs oxygen to take place. Cellular respiration takes place in the mitochondria, as we said, which are also called the powerhouses of the cell because they make most of the cell's ATP. The mitochondrion cannot make ATP directly from food. First of all, the food has to be broken down into smaller molecules. Okay, breaking down, here is it. Remember we said lysis when we were talking about the macrophages and how they break down the other foreign bodies that enter the cell. Lysis means breaking down. Glycolysis means that the glucose is going to be broken down. So in glycolysis, the glucose will be split into 3 carbon molecules. two 3-carbon molecules. What does this mean? We said that glucose is C6H12O6. So it needs to be broken down into two 3-carbon. So it was C6, it's going to be C3. So we're going to have two molecules that start with C3. This is why we call it two 3-carbon molecule. How much ATP are we going to have? We're going to have two molecules of ATP. Glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm. Glycolysis is going to happen within the cytoplasm of the cell, and it does not need oxygen. So glycolysis is also called anaerobic process. Why is it an anaerobic process? Because it does not need oxygen. So again, cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria. It is needed to break down the sugar that is made by the cell by the plants in the morning in order to produce ATP. This is how the plants are going to use up the food that they produced in the morning. Exactly like when you cook and then you need to eat. It doesn't stop at cooking. You also need to eat. Cellular respiration, where does it happen? It happens in the mitochondria, and it's an aerobic process. It needs oxygen. Glycolysis doesn't happen in the mitochondria. It happens in the cytoplasm, and it is an anaerobic process. It does not need oxygen. What does it do? We said that it breaks down the glucose, which is C6, into two 3-carbon sugar. It's going to break it down into two 3-carbon molecules. Here is the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the site for cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is almost a mirror image of photosynthesis. Here is the mitochondria. We need to look here because the structure of the mitochondria is very important to show us the function. Remember, structure is how is it formed. Function, what does it do? The structure of the mitochondria, here what you see, the outer membrane, the inner membrane is folded in order to increase the surface area, in order to do more work. Okay, photosynthesis and cellular respiration are almost opposites. Okay, the chloroplast absorb the energy from the sunlight and build the sugar. The mitochondria release the chemical energy to make ATP. The chemical equation of cellular respiration is also basically the reverse of photosynthesis. But the structure of the chloroplast and the mitochondria are also similar. The mitochondria are surrounded by membrane. We have two parts inside the mitochondria that really matter in the process of cellular respiration. The matrix, here is it, and the inner mitochondrial membrane. The matrix and the inner mitochondrial membrane. When we were talking about the chloroplasts, we said the two important parts were the stroma and the grain. So in the mitochondria we have the matrix and the inner mitochondrial membrane. In the chloroplasts we had the stroma and the grain. During the Krebs cycle, what's gonna happen? What is the Krebs cycle? The Krebs cycle is part of the process that produces molecules that carry energy to the second part of cellular respiration. Remember when we were talking about the Kelvin cycle and how it was producing ATPs? The Krebs cycle produces molecules that carry energy to the second part of cellular respiration. The Krebs cycle is named after the scientist who made it. He was named Hans Krebs. Okay? And it happens within the matrix of the mitochondria. During the Krebs cycle, the 3-carbon molecules from glycolysis, we said that glycolysis is going to break down the sugar into two 3-carbon molecules. So the 3-carbon molecules from glycolysis are broken down in a series of chemical reactions. A small number of ATP molecules are produced. Other types of energy-carrying molecules are also made. We're going to talk about them in full details during the explanation of the Krebs cycle. This is just an introduction to the cellular respiration, where it happens, how is it divided into multiple steps, and what do we get at the end of cellular respiration. For tomorrow's session, we're going to have the Krebs cycle in full details. So, After the Krebs cycle breaks down, the 3 carbon molecules are broken down in a series of chemical reactions. A small number of ATP is produced. Then an electron transport chain made of more proteins is going to need energy carrying molecule from the Krebs cycle and oxygen to make ATP. So during Krebs cycle, what happens in the Krebs cycle? The 3 carbon molecules from glycolysis are broken down in a cycle of chemical reaction, and a small number of ATP molecules are made. Energy is transferred to the second stage then of cellular respiration. This reminds us of what? Reminds us of the light dependent and the light independent reactions of photosynthesis, because as we said, cellular respiration and photosynthesis are so similar yet so different because they're almost the opposite of each other. During photosynthesis, we said that the plants are going to use the carbon dioxide and the water to produce sugar and oxygen. Here it is the exact opposite that happens. The sugar is broken down in the presence of oxygen to produce carbon dioxide and water vapor, and of course ATP that is used up by the cell. So in the second part of the cellular respiration, here is the outer membrane of the mitochondria. This is here in the matrix, which is in the inside of the mitochondria. This is where the cellular respiration is going to happen. So during the cellular respiration, the energy is transferred to a chain of proteins where in the inner mitochondrial membrane. Here is the inner mitochondrial membrane. A large number of ATP molecules are made. Oxygen enters the process and is used to make water molecules. What do we get at the end? We get water and heat, which are giving off as waste products. How many ATPs are produced during the process? We get almost 38 ATP molecules are coming from the breakdown of 1 glucose molecule, 2 from glycolysis, and 34 to 36 from cellular respiration. This is the structure of the inner membrane, but you really don't need to know this. So again, cellular respiration, it is the process by which the organism obtains the energy available in the carbohydrates. ATP, of course, as we said, it's the energy currency of the cell. Aerobic respiration, it is related to the presence of the air. It's a type of respiration which is carried on in the presence of oxygen, by which the oxygen is obtained from the air or from the water in which it's dissolved. This is the equation of the cellular respiration, and it's the exact opposite of the equation of photosynthesis. It's glucose plus oxygen, which is burned down in the presence of oxygen, producing carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Anaerobic respiration, because it's part of the cellular respiration, we call it glycolysis. Glycolysis, which is the breaking down of glucose. It's a type of respiration in which a number of one-celled organisms, includes yeast and many forms of bacteria, can carry on in the absence of oxygen. Here they describe it as it happens in the bacteria, but it's also a part of the cellular respiration. Our cellular respiration that happens in our cells, the cellular respiration that happens in the plants, it includes both parts. Part the aerobic and part which is anaerobic. During the anaerobic respiration, there is glycolysis. Lysis means breaking down. So we have the glucose, it's going to be broken down into lactic acid and energy. So these are the steps. The glucose, C6H12O6, with the oxygen, because this is happening in the presence of oxygen within the mitochondria. By glycolysis, it's going to be broken down into lactic acid and oxygen, and then it's going to go to the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle is going to produce electron transport chain, which are going to transport the electrons and produce the movement within the inside of the mitochondria, and then we get the carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. This is the most important need of the cellular respiration, the breaking down of sugar in order to produce energy. As we said before, Your bodies, the plants, any organism on the planet, they need ATP as their energy currencies. There are other currencies for energy, but ATP is like the most famous. This is just an introduction to cellular respiration. I need you to check it on your book. It's chapter 4. It's chapter 4, section 4. Please read it. Tomorrow we're going to talk about Krebs cycle in full details.